if you want to support the show, you can go to mwpnews.com/support, where you can pick up my latest book, Succession Planning, and all my other books that have previously been released on Kindle for only $2.99 each. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. We didn't have a news episode last week, so we'll have some things from last week, some things from this week. We will see what comes where. We've got 5 stories as usual. We have our box office report. We have what's coming to theaters and what's coming to DVD and Blu-ray, as we do every week. But let's start out with our first story. Apple TV Plus is doing an adaptation of Neuromancer by William Gibson. Now, it's a weird situation, because I said this, I think, when me and Peter did our episode of Beware of Spoilers, where we talked about Dune Part 2 for like an hour and a half, an hour 45, we talked about how the lesson that should be learned from this is find someone who's passionate about some work of science fiction or fantasy. Find someone and ask them, what do you want to do? And I don't know if that was the process here, but we do know now that the Neuromancer, which has been notoriously hard to adapt, but is a seminal work of science fiction in the same way Dune is finally being adapted by Apple TV Plus. And I think this is a fairly smart move. We would not have the cyberpunk genre in its current form without Neuromancer, so to put it on Apple TV Plus and be like, look, we're going to do this, that's smart. Also, The Peripheral didn't do terribly. I mean, it didn't do well enough to warrant a second season, but it didn't do terribly for Amazon Prime. So, there is a market for this, and I would be interested to see how this plays out when it does inevitably come out. Again, it's in early development right now. We're not in a position where it's like, oh, this is coming out imminently, so we know anything about it. I do know it was written by one of the staff writers from the final season of Lost, which does not inspire a ton of confidence in me. So it'll depend on who else ends up in this writer's room. It'll depend what else goes on and who gets attached to it. And I think this is gonna be made or broken by how things look in this world. I'm curious about how this will end up, but I do think Apple TV Plus does put money into their stuff because their stuff always looks great. I'm just confused about I'm just concerned about how good this will be. I still haven't watched Foundation yet. That's on me. I will eventually watch Foundation. I'm optimistic, and I think that this is a sign that we're learning the right lessons from Dune. Hopefully, we get to see some options from Becky Chambers, because a long way to a small distance. Hopefully, we get movement on the Broken Earth trilogy from N.K. Jemisin and some of her other stuff. She's also fantastic. The Parable of the Sower from Octavia Butler is great too. And one of my personal favorite books from the last few years, This Is How You Lose the Time War. Hopefully we can get some of these things adapted, and that's kind of where we go. Find someone who is, and also, Arrival got nominated for Best Picture. Why don't we take a look in at Ted Chiang's other work? Because he does a lot of really great work beyond, that one. If you go into Exhalation, there are tons of great shorts in Exhalation that are totally worth looking into. The life cycle of software objects is prime for a Hulu series. And then so is the dizziness is the anxiety of the last one in that collection, which is the name I'm forgetting. Also very much worth optioning. But yeah, there's plenty of room here for this to really expand and do something really great. But speaking of Dune Messiah may be closer than we thought. They don't want to do it until they have a concrete script. But apparently the higher-ups at Legendary are saying that as soon as they have the script, they are ready to go. They will hit the ground running on Dune Messiah, which is fantastic. If you have not seen Dune Part 2 yet, I've seen it 3 times now, go see Dune Part 2. It is an absolutely masterful work of filmmaking. It is great. The Dune series gets weird. Hopefully with Messiah and with Prophecy coming out later this year, allegedly a trailer coming this week, with Prophecy on the horizon, and with that, if we can solidify Dune as a franchise, I just want to see Leto Atreides II as a giant fucking sandworm. That's what I want to see. Can we get to that point? Can we? Can we? Because that's what I want. So Messiah is on the horizon, and that will be happening sooner rather than later, I think. Now let's look at a little bit at what we have from Villeneuve coming up. Apparently he has another movie that he thinks needs to come before anything else. He's also got Rendezvous with Riva, or Rama, and then he also has the Cleopatra movie and Dune Messiah. So it'll be interesting to know where he falls in on this and what comes first and what comes next. But right now we're in the middle of witnessing one of the greatest runs from a director in the history of film. Because, let's look at just his science fiction stuff. Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, Dune Part 2. Right there. But then if you go back further, Sicario and Prisoners, this man is on a legendary run. And it'll be interesting to see what he can do with, what the other projects he has coming down the horizon. And I'm interested to see how that plays out. Messiah, My only concern with Messiah, and spoilers for Dune Part 2 and spoilers for Dune Messiah, is in Messiah, Paul and Chani are together, they're married, and they have, she's about to give birth to twins, and you also have, Irulan is married to Paul, but she's not really Paul's wife. Paul is genuinely attached to Chani. And that's kind of the issue with, based on where Dune leaves off, I feel like just being like, okay, and then Chani got over it and now they're back together, is one of those things where I'm like, I feel like that's, you gave all this autonomy to this character, to take it away and be like, oh, and now they're back together, feels not like a great ending for that. So I would be interested to see how they handle it. So hopefully we get to see this movie at some point in the near future. I think that by the time, we get through 2030, we will see Messiah, and then also we will see a end of, we will see, I think we see Children of Dune as well, and we get an answer as to, because I made this prediction on Beware Spoilers as well. I think Villeneuve is going to stick through Messiah. I think people could be riding the high of Part 2 into Prophecy. So I think even if Prophecy is not great, people are going to be like, oh shit, this is more Dune, that's good. This world is rich. That can be done. I think after Messiah, Messiah may sour some people. And then what'll happen is when we get to Children, that'll be the downturn point when it's a different director and a different writer working on Messiah. Working on Children of Dune. And then we will see what goes on there. And then that will be the beginning of the end of this cascading nonsense. But we'll see how that plays out in the future. Story number 3, Salem's Lot is moving to streaming. It was originally slated to go to theaters from Warner Brothers and New Line. They shot it. It was supposed to come out last year. It was delayed due to the pandemic. Not the pandemic. It was delayed due to the strikes. And the issue is there's no clear reason as to why this moved to streaming. Now, I mean, look, it's a weird position we're in where I'm like, oh, good, they moved it to streaming instead of just ditching it all together, which is kind of where I was to begin with. But at the same time, I kind of feel like this is a move to shore up the back half of their year on Max, I think. I think that, right now, we are going to get, allegedly this week, we're getting trailers for The Penguin, and we're getting trailers for Dune Prophecy. I may or may not have seen one of these trailers. and I may or may not be able to speak to the fact that the show looks fantastic based on the trailer, and I'm very much looking forward to the show based on the trailer. If they do drop this week, we'll talk about both. But I think I'm technically NDA'd about this trailer, so I can't say specifics about it. But it's an interesting approach to this, because here's the thing: they have those two shows, they have Creature Commandos, and I feel like they have one more show that's coming out definitively this year. The problem is, if that's all you have, what are you bringing to the table theatrically, and what's going to keep people tuning in and week out? Look at the output of Netflix, look at the output of Disney Plus, look at the output of Paramount Plus. They have stuff constantly hitting those platforms. If Max doesn't have that, what's the point? Right now they have The Girls on the Bus, which is pretty good, and they have HBO content, but what else have they got? Especially in the back half of the year to fill in. They don't have a big Halloween title. If you put this on streaming and you have this slated for your late fall release, and you have this slated for your this could be your Halloween release, that will shore up your deal a little bit better, and that'll give you more time that'll give you something to watch on Halloween, and it'll draw people to the platform. A Stephen King adaptation of something that already got adapted once before, so people are familiar with the concept. There's a lot to go into this, and I think that's a pretty smart idea. And I think the reason why they moved it rather than ditch it is I think the budget is low enough where it would, because look at what other things have moved in the recent years. Last year, Mad Max Double XL. Oh no, I'm sorry, Magic Mike's Last Dance was the one that moved, and the other one was Evil Dead Rise. Both of these were very low budget, went to theaters, made back their budget. The most profitable movie for Warner Bros. Last year was Evil Dead Rise, because it was so cheap to make, and then it went to theaters and it made a couple $100 million. That was a smart move by them. The issue was, where do we, with this, if we put it in theaters, we can make that money back. But I would assume this is a movie that, it comes from Juan, maybe a $70 million budget. It'd make 100, 110. But if we put it on streaming, we can put it there, and it'll shore up our slate for streaming for later in the year. That's how I feel. That's what I feel is going on there. But we'll see how that goes out, and how that actually, plays out in reality. Story number 4, Doctor Who, Season 14/Season 1 has a release date. It'll be releasing on May 10th. This will be the first season with, I gotta look up how to pronounce his name. According to a pronunciation guide, Shuri Gatwa is how you pronounce it. But he was fantastic in the Christmas special, which is his first full episode. His first full episode with Millie Gibson, who will be his companion this season. 2 episodes will be premiering on May 10th, and then after that it will be weekly episodes from there on out for the rest of the season. It'll be on Disney Plus on Fridays, and also on the BBC. Our final story, The Batman Part 2 has been delayed a full year to 2026. This doesn't come as a huge surprise, considering we know next to nothing about the movie. The script is not done yet, and it was slated for release next October, which would indicate to me that we're probably also going to get a delay of, of Blade. Because here's the thing, we don't have a script yet. All we know is Robert Pattinson's coming back. We know nothing else. How were they going to get this movie shot by next year? They weren't going to. So delaying it a year makes sense, and 2026 is a lot less stacked of a year, because 2025, we've talked about this before, Fantastic Four, Captain America 4, what else have we got? Thunderbolts, we've got Blade, we've got Superman Legacy, now Superman, we've got, there's a lot next year. There's that new Avatar movie, there's a new Avatar, Blue Cat people, there's a lot next year. So spending the time to be okay, we're going to put this out too, feels like a lot. So moving into the year gives Warner Bros. A little bit more breathing room because I think all we have in 2026 really so far, I think there's an untitled Marvel movie and Avengers 5. But they're putting it in October, so you're not really competing with anything. So I think it's a smart move. Depressing, because I want to see that movie, but smart move. That will wrap it up for our news stories, which brings us to our weekly box office report. Let's take a look at what we got. Number one, remaining at number one from last week, is Kung Fu Panda 4 with $30 million. Just behind it at number two, remaining there from last week, is Dune Part 2 with $29.1 million. Arthur the King comes in at number three as a newcomer at $7.5 million. Imaginary drops one spot to number three with $5.6 million. And Cabrini drops one spot to number five from number four from $2.8 million. That is a movie from the studio that did what's it called? Sound of Freedom. What the fuck that QAnon movie was? And Love Lies Bleeding, which had a huge jump, came in at number six with $2.4 million, which is it's an interesting movie. I would check it out. What else have we got? Let's see. Coming to theaters this week, we have Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire. For those of you who are interested in Ghostbusters, it's a sequel to Afterlife. Cool. Immaculate, the new horror movie with Sydney Sweeney, where she plays a nun who is an immaculate conception. That comes out this week. And Luca is being re-released in theaters for your viewing pleasure, because that was punted to streaming for no good reason, because at that point we were... Was that? No. I'm thinking of Turning Red. Never mind. That was still not mid-pandemic, but that was still dumb decision. And in the expanded collection this week, not too much coming out. We have Cult Killer starring Antonio Banderas and Alice Eve as our big title release this week on DVD. Next week, we will hopefully have trailers to talk about, because allegedly we have trailers dropping this week. But until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.